Hey there, fellow coders, and welcome back to the One Code Camp channel. So today we're going to be discussing more about DOM manipulation, and we're going to dive deep into behavior and the dynamic elements that go into our web page, along with capping off our DOM manipulation series for today. So let's fire up our code editors, and let's dive deep into the world of JavaScript. So where we left off is we were able to create the HTML and CSS of our web page. And in this case, we're going to continue our JavaScript for this little project that we have. And in case you need to catch up, we could just watch the previous part. And if you still do not have VS Code, we could just get it from the official website and pick which operating system we need for this. And once again, we need the extension of Live Server. So in case you still don't have it, please install it in Visual Studio Code accordingly. All right, so this is where we left off. You were able to create 3 headings, a little quote. We were able to display an image and make a table and a form. So this is pretty much all-purpose for a lot of web pages. And these are pretty basic stylings as well, in case you need some basic styling to make your page look good. So now we're going to start off by creating our JavaScript. But before we do that, we should go to the bottom of the body here and create a script tag. And for this, we're going to say the source is script.js. So this is going to be done because this HTML won't be linked to any JavaScript unless we make that link. So we're also able to put it in the link as well, but the recommended way to put in our JavaScript files is through this script tag. So it loads after everything is loaded from the HTML. All right. So once we have this, now we can create our script.js file. And then in here, we could start by pinpointing which HTML element we're going to be editing or using. So the first thing we could pinpoint is maybe start from the top, and let's see if we can get the first heading. So we could use const to make this variable a constant variable, so it won't be changed anywhere after this code. And we're going to say first heading, since it will refer to the first heading. So a good way to utilize query selector, so we could say query selector here, is that this query selector only gets the first occurrence or returns the first element as a descendant of the node that matches the selector that we put in these codes. So let's say in here, I want to say the first heading. So it is the first H1. And with that, we can try and log what this says. Okay. And in order to check out this log, again, we need to look at our DevTools. And we can see our first heading over here. So everything's working pretty good. So you could take out this log and let's try and mess with the first heading's attributes. So we could say first heading style, not color. So once again, for the style, it's just the CSS styling of the element. In this case, we change the color of the first heading to red, and we could already see it here. All right, so that's working pretty good. And we could also use other properties that are available when we change the CSS of the element. So let's say I want to change the text align. That is also available, and we could say it is center. And there it is. Now it is centered. And we could even change the content of the element, and we could say my website. So it will only apply to the first heading, and we were able to change the text content and the stylings of the first heading. Pretty simple. So that is one of the possibilities we could do when we create JavaScript code for our web pages. So another thing that we could do is we could also utilize the list of our headings. And this is going to return the list of headings if we use query selector all and pinpoint the H1. So let's make sure that we're getting the right one. And it's returning a node list of all of the H1s. So that's good, that's good. All right, so now I want to use this list in order to remove these 2 headings over here since they seem pretty redundant. So in order to do that, let us remember that our indexing always starts with 0. So in this case, 0 would refer to the first one. And if we say remove to this, it will remove the first one. And we don't want that, we want that one to stay. So we go to the next one after 0, which is 1. And that will remove the second one. and this will remove the third one. And that's looking a lot better. All right, so now you're able to utilize what we learned from the previous videos. You're able to change the attributes. You're able to specify which elements we're looking for, and we're able to remove as well. And that's not all. Now we can add in a styling for our image because the code seems pretty okay. We could just leave it as that. So in this case, now I want to target the image. So you could say const of image, since this won't change later on, and we could say document.querySelector image. So this is the only image that's available in our web page. So this will do for now for our purposes. And in this case, now we're going to utilize some JavaScript functionalities. And we could see our IMG here has some properties that we could use, and we're looking for something called onMouseOver. So its direct counterpart in CSS would be called the hover pseudo class. So that is its counterpart in CSS, and when we do it here, it's also going to mimic what we do if we hover the mouse over this image. So in this case, we're going to pass it through an arrow function, and the arrow function, if you're not familiar, is just another way to declare a function that was introduced in ECMAScript 6. So in this case, it just makes it a lot shorter, so you won't have to type in the word function. In this case, it's just going to send out these parameters to run a certain code using this arrow. All right, so once that's done, we need to specify what's going to happen every time we hover over this image. So we could say something will change using the style, and we're going to utilize a new style, which is called filter. So filter has a lot of possibilities that we could do, but in this case, we could say that using filter, we could add in a drop shadow. And we could say 0, 8 pixels, 10 pixels, and gray for the shadow color. Okay, so let's see how this will look like. And as you can see, that is working pretty well. But the problem is, when we hover over this, the drop shadow doesn't go away. And we need to be able to reset this back to its usual state. So in the case of JavaScript, we also have another event that is called onMouseLeave. So it will be the opposite of a hover. So if your mouse leaves the element, then it will run this function. So we could just say that the filter here for this style is going to be empty. Okay, and let's see how that looks like. So we're able to see that we have a drop shadow here, and when our mouse leaves, it is gone. So that's working pretty well. And we're able to see that there's actually a transition happening here. So it gradually fades into the shadow when we leave and when we hover our mouse over it. So that's actually the power of the transition that we put in our style before. So if we just search for this image, and here it is. So it gives us 0.3 seconds to process this new styling. So that's pretty cool. All right, so now we're able to tackle the events of images and how it would affect our DOM. And this another sector of DOM manipulation that we can utilize as well to make our pages a lot more dynamic. All right. And the next thing we could do is probably we could target the table. So we could say here, we're looking for the body of our table. We could say document.querySelector the body, since that is what we are looking for. And the next thing we're going to target is const.tr, and we're not going to target the current table rows. This is going to be what we're going to create. So you could say create element tr. All right, so these are looking pretty good so far. So the sense of what this is going to do is we're going to use this tbody in order to generate new rows for our table. So in the case of making our JavaScript more dynamic, this is going to make it so that we could accept in some arrays of data or maybe some collections of data, and we could output it to a table in our front end. So in order to do that, we should utilize a for loop. So we could use one of these tooltips over here to make our lives a lot easier. So we could use this second one, and it gives us quite a bit of text to start with. In this case, let's try and make it a lot more specific to our needs. So in this case, we could just shorten this index to I. And then we could say, maybe we could make I less than 3. So in the case of this for loop, we're just going to be adding 3 new elements to this new row that we're adding on. Okay. And since these are 3 columns, then this should do for our purposes as well. So for this, the next thing we're going to do is create a new const in here, and we could say it is td. And with the same sense of the tr variable, we're going to use document.createElement, and we're going to say in here td. Okay, that's looking pretty good so far. And now for this one, we're going to say the td text content could be equal to I. And let's see how that'll look like. So it's not going to show yet. It's because this td is currently not inside of our document flow or inside our HTML. So in order to do that, we need to be able to append this to something that already is in the document flow. So for that, let's try tr append child and td. So for every loop that's going to happen here, we're going to create a new element, and that text content is going to be the current number of the index of our for loop, and it's going to append that to our table row. But in this case, we still don't see this new row appearing on our table, and that's because this tr is not in our document flow as well. So we need to do that as well. So for this tbody, we could also utilize the append child, and we could append this new row that we have, and we could see that it was able to create a new row using the indexes of this for loop. So that's how we're able to add in a new row to our table. All right. So with DOM manipulation, it's also possible to edit rows as well and create new tables with data that will come in from maybe another server or from a website that is sending out data to ours. All right. And the last thing we're going to tackle for this is being able to change out what's happening in our form down here. So in this form, we see that it has a name and an age and a submit button. So for this, I want to make it so that this name and age will be able to show something on our website when we hit on submit. Okay, so let's try and see how this is going to work. So let's create a new const to target our form, since this is going to be the main actor of this functionality. So you could say const form is equal to document query selector form. So if this one is enclosed in a form tag, so we target that. And the next thing we're going to do is const name document dot query selector, and we're going to say ID of name. So in our index, we named it, we gave it an ID of name and an ID of age. So we're going to utilize that to get the values of each. Okay. And after that, we're going to say const age, and we're going to use the same logic here. And instead of name, we're going to say an ID of age. Okay. And now we could use this form and check out its properties. So we could say on, and these are what we could actually look at. So what we're looking for specifically is this on submit, since when we have a form here, there's an event to let it submit. So for this form.onSubmit, we're going to check out its e and make another arrow function. So what is this e? So e is just a shorthand term for an event, and the usual behavior for this form when we press submit is it will refresh the page. And the first thing we want to do is to prevent that. So that event is called an on reload or a page refresh. So in order to do that, we're going to get this event and prevent default. So instead of refreshing every time we submit, it will stay. And then we're able to run the functionalities that happen after this prevent default. Okay. So after this, we're going to check out what's happening in our name and age. So let's say display name is equal to name.value. And if that name.value is not empty, so in this case, we're going to say this name.value is not empty, so it's currently true or false. But this is just a start for something that is called a ternary operator. So for this, we're going to say name.value if it is true, and if it is false, we'll follow it up with a colon, and then the value it will be if it is false. Okay, so the sense of this is if it has a value, then we'll make the display name equal to that value. If not, it will just be a default of user. So that seems simple enough. And now we could say our display age is equal to age.value. And once again, use a ternary operator. And in this case, let's not use the not equal to 0. We could say is greater than 0. Then we can populate the display age with the age value. And if not, we could just say the age is unknown because we don't know their real age. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to create an element where this is going to display, because we currently don't have an element that's set out to do that kind of behavior yet. And this is where our discussion on creating elements is going to come in once again. So now we're going to put this in a header. So I could say const header. And this time I want to create an element that is on h2. So we could do that. And we could say this header text content is equal to, and this is where we're going to use tildes. So these are called tildes or backticks in case you want to put in some variables inside some string. And this is called template strings or template literals. So we're going to plug in some variables to make it into some string content as well. So things are a lot easier for us when we're formatting. So we're going to say in here, hello. And in order to put in a variable in the string, we're going to use a $sign and then some curly braces. And we're going to say in here, display name. And after this, we're going to utilize the age as well. Once again, use a $sign and the curly braces, and we'll say display age, years old. All right. And now let's see if we could also change the styling of this header as well. So you could say header.style. And let's say I want to change the font style, because that is also an available property that we could utilize. And we could say this could be italic. All right. And now we're going to try and insert this after this my website. So it should be in between this code and under this my website header. So how are we going to do that? All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to target this first heading, and then we're going to get its parent. And the thing with being able to insert this in any place that we want in our element, in our document, is that we have a functionality that's called insert before. So this insert before is a function that will insert before a certain child if you have a node that you want to put in the document flow. So in this case, we need to be able to get the parent of this first heading in order to put this inside of our document. So we're going to say in here, parent insert before, and then we're going to say header, and then first heading. So let's see how that looks like right now. So we're currently not seeing anything because we haven't submitted our form yet. So let's try and submit that form. So if I put nothing, then it will give us a default of what is being seen up here. Okay, so for our form here, after we populate this, or we could even say nothing in here since it already has a default of user and unknown. So let's try that out right now. Okay, so we see that after we submit, it shows a hello user, you're unknown years old. But that's not what we're supposed to see. We're supposed to see this my website and then this hello user. So how do we do that? So in this case, we're going to say first heading dot next sibling. So it's going to be inserting before the next sibling of this my website, which is the block code. So it's going to be showing up in between these two. So the thing with JavaScript is that there isn't an insert after. So we have to utilize this kind of method if we want to insert after or in between two elements. So we could say in here, submit, and we now see hello user, you're unknown years old. So now that works pretty well. And maybe one last thing we could add in here is we could say that the header style is going to be aligned to the center. And maybe that will be the last thing we're going to add for this web page. Okay. So let's see how this is going to work now. So what if I put in my name here and my age? So let's say my age is 25. So let's submit. And we could see in here, hello Jared, you're 25 years old. And everything is working pretty well. And that is already some pretty decent styling and being able to handle a form as well using JavaScript. So that is pretty much our small project done. And now we could actually highlight our main focus here, which is structure versus style versus behavior. So let's notice how everything is kept in its own file. We have the structure here in our HTML. We have the style here in our CSS. I mean, it's even the name. And we have our behavior here in our JavaScript. And the thing is, we need to separate these kinds of things because if we imagine all of this in one single file, it's going to be pretty cumbersome. So imagine all of these files added up together. We could see this has 82 or 83 lines, and this has 50. And this has, wow, this has a lot. This has 137. So if we imagine all of that, it's going to be around 300 lines in one file. But imagine if we have these concerns separated, we could mess with the structure that's over here. We could see the styling of all of our things over here, and we could see our behavior in here. So this kind of separation of concerns, and being able to see multiple parts in their own sectors, this being the structure, style, and behavior, is definitely a way to go about organizing your projects. And this is one of the ways to keep our code readable and coder friendly. And the thing with all of this is nothing here is possible without the HTML, because the HTML in here is really the backbone or the skeleton of everything that is happening in this current project. So without the HTML, we have nothing, because these CSS and JavaScript are just ways to edit the style and behavior of our current structure. And this style over here is just that. It's purely just the style and the appeal of our page. And it is really important, as users won't be looking at our page if our styling isn't very good or doesn't look very modern. And some people may undermine the usage of our style, but the style is actually very beneficial in keeping our user retention and just plain making our website look as amazing as it is. So the JS is there to make things a lot more dynamic. So if we do events or change things on our website or access things, it is able to take that data and mess with the current behavior of the website. So in the case of selecting items in here and manipulating what's happening in our DOM or our document, we're going to be able to select things, edit their attributes, or even remove them outright. We could even add in functionalities when an event happens. We could even use for loops to create multiple elements to populate things like tables or other things that need multiple elements or multiple tags. And we're even able to handle forms and generate some data based on what our users submit. So with the power of all these three together, we're able to create some pretty dynamic websites that we could use for our own purposes or maybe show off to our friends as well. And that is going to be it for our structure versus style versus behavior topic. And that actually might also be it for our DOM manipulation tutorial. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed a thing or two, and I hope to see you in the next videos on the One Code Camp channel. Thank you for watching.